Here's Brody Brazil.
It's not even an exaggeration to say right now that I don't want to be here. I do not want to be making this video. I wanted to lay off this topic for just a couple days. It's been so heavy and intense with the A's and relocation and Las Vegas and Oakland and Clark County and Carson City and the state of Nevada. I mean, it's been so much. And I just wanted to step away because, look, we understand where this sits right now. There's only one more step remaining, and that's a 75% confirming vote by MLB owners. If they approve the A's relocation application, that's it. Then it's really a done deal. As of right now, no, it's not done, but we can all see how it's lined up and what remains. I'm not here to say that it's procedural at all or guaranteeing you that it will all happen, but we are literally near that end. So I just wanted to step away, catch my breath on all this, and not really comment on anything else, but other people keep saying things that need some commentary to go along with it. That's why I'm here to make this YouTube video. In this case, Steve Yeager, by the way, Speaker of the Assembly in the Nevada State Legislature, didn't say things, he tweeted things in another thread. Yes, I've already done a video on a Steve Yeager thread. Last time he was talking about how we got from a regular session to a special session, and I give him credit. He took to social media, wanted to explain himself. I don't know that everybody agreed with all of his tweets, but they appreciated the transparency and the opportunity he was giving to try and reach out to the general public, like his constituents, but also people outside of Nevada and beyond. And just real quick, on Steve Yeager, partner at Vegas Battleborn. I know they're personal injury lawyers, a Michigan undergrad, a Cornell law grad. I'd have to think, being from that part of the country, maybe a Red Wings guy, because he's also a fitness and outdoor enthusiast, and he is #VegasBorn. I like that he likes hockey, and he's got good reason to like his true hometown team, the Golden Knights. I said this before, I'll repeat it again. I don't know Steve at all. I'm really only basing this on what I've seen and what he says and how he handles himself. But if we ran into each other at a bar, we might share a drink. We might share some conversation. I don't mean like share the same drink. You know what I'm saying. They're separate drinks. Together. Whatever. Anyway, let's get into Steve Yeager's Twitter thread again. A final thread on SB 1 of the 35th special session of the Nevada State Legislature. We spent 8 days on the bill, along with the time spent on it during the 82nd regular session. It received 3 separate hearings, 2 of which were committees of the whole. No other bill received that type of vetting. 3 different hearings for something that is valued at, let's call it $400 million, over 30 years, and a major change to the Las Vegas Strip. This is a big deal. And as much as we talk about these hearings, one of which, by the way, took place on Memorial Day. No, not famously, infamously took place on Memorial Day at like 4 p.m, went 6 hours. And speaking of these 3 separate hearings, what real opportunity was there for the public to present their opinion? Yeah, there was call-ins, maybe 2 out of the 3 hearings, but the public had to wait 4, 5+ hours for that chance and either do it by phone or show up in person. And like, considering that it wasn't a slam dunk, considering that there were a lot of questions and it was already detailed and complex and criticism for a multitude of different reasons, and, you know, some support of it too. But I think what we witnessed in the hearings was a lot of questioning and a lot of opposition. But 3 hearings, most of which were taken up by a presentation from the A's, Jeremy Aguero and Steve Hill. They did their thing, like literally the same thing, 3 times over, I believe, when it was said and done. So to say that no other bill received that type of vetting, I mean, I know it's a get to yes type place, the state of Nevada and Las Vegas and even Clark County in general, but that seems awfully quick. I don't know that they ever really got to details about things like traffic considerations or what the FAA has to say about this. So to tout 3 separate hearings and nothing else got this much attention, well, nothing else should. I mean, well, the $7 billion budget bill hopefully did, and hopefully took a lot more time. But this was 3 hearings over 10 days? How much time did it really have to sink in? After favorable amendments in both the Senate and the Assembly, 38 of 63 legislators voted for it, and the governor signed it. Well, I can't speak for anyone else. I voted yes because I believe the investment is worth the risk to further solidify Nevada's economic future. Those favorable amendments, let me just remind you of the timeline of how they popped up. This used to be called SB 509. That's how it was presented in the regular session. It was never even voted on because it never even passed through the Finance Committee. They never recommended it to the Senate for a vote. And the regular session ended. We thought, hey, it's done. It's gone. It's dead. It just never got brought up on purpose. But then a special session was called. And in that special session, it was presented as SB 1. And there were no modifications to it, no amendments to it. And the Senate really did not like that. So both sides decided to take the weekend off, a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. And when they came back, there were multiple amendments. And I believe it was the second amendment to SB 1, which had 2 prior bills that were probably not going to be signed by Governor Joe Lombardo, brought back into being part of SB 1. They had nothing to do with the A's or a baseball stadium or the Las Vegas Strip and construction. These were totally separate bills that lawmakers wanted to have go into law that were probably not going to happen. They were baked back in to SB 1. So those are the favorable amendments, by the way, at least one of the 2 favorable amendments. The other one was just a more detailed community benefits program by the A's, which I know he's going to talk about here later in this video. But just so you understand, that's how these amendments got brought back into things. And just in terms of Steve's thoughts here on worth the risk, at least he's acknowledging that this is not straightforward, easy, and that there is actually some risk to it. This was the only realistic chance for Las Vegas to obtain an MLB franchise, which was always going to require a public-private partnership. While an expansion team might have been possible, I am certain the cost would have been much higher and it would have taken many more years. Now, Steve, I do agree with you on this. That expansion team is very possible. I mean, if you just look at the quotes from the last 12 months alone, MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred has flat out said 2 more teams are coming. And if you do the math, the logistical math, one's going to be in the East. That's Nashville. That one's kind of ready to go. The other one's going to come out West. You are out West. The A's had even pursued Las Vegas from the beginnings, even if they didn't move there, as kind of a favor to Major League Baseball to just test out the market, see what's down here, pass along some intel if it was time for somebody else. What really makes you think that Las Vegas wouldn't have been considered? Why do you feel so, I'm not saying desperate, but why do you feel so motivated to grab the A's because they're here, they're now, and they're not even the best car on the lot, but you just need a car? Maybe that's kind of what this was. And I would also have to say that, do you really know that any MLB franchise was going to require a public-private partnership for a ballpark? I agree that it would have cost somebody a lot more to expand. I do believe the expansion fee is about $2 billion. In addition to, building a stadium and other cost requirements. So it was going to cost somebody, but look at the NBA. They now, all of a sudden, now that Major League Baseball seems to be going through in Las Vegas, the NBA and some investors there are saying, we'd like to bring a basketball team here, and don't worry about public funding. We don't need any of it. To assume that the public always had to chip in, I don't know about that. And to assume that you wouldn't be on the short list of expansion franchises, I don't know about that either. Expansion is definitely happening in baseball. I hear the criticism about public funding for stadiums, but nobody has been able to explain the success of Allegiant Stadium. Its projections were proven too conservative. Yet they were criticized at the time for being pie in the sky. They weren't. Las Vegas is, indeed, unique. And I would agree to a certain extent. Las Vegas with tourism and the way they know how to put on events. I mean, Los Angeles does too. So does New York. You could argue Chicago could put on an event, but LA and New York and, yeah, Las Vegas. I'll put them there. They are very much all about a performance and a show. They do events well. Do we really know that they do sports seasons well? How long have the Golden Knights existed for? 6 years. They've had the NHL's silver spoon in their mouth literally the entire time, and that's not their fault. They got a great head start, and they've ran a good sprint after that and since that. Credit to them. How long have the Raiders existed down there? How have they done since coming down there? And they knew there was anticipation and build-up to coming down there. They still did not build a true playoff caliber contender and winner. They're still trying to figure things out. And their games are dominated by visiting crowds. And to that point, the success of Allegiant Stadium, it's because Las Vegas never had a 70,000-seat venue before like this, where you could have K-pop concerts. Was it BTS sold it out 3 nights in a row, and Taylor Swift sold it out 2 nights in a row? But now there's the MSG Sphere, which is opening up north on the Strip. There's other events in other places. Those are all going to take away from Allegiant Stadium. It's kind of like this, going back to the car analogy. Like every family, generally speaking, if you, let's say, live in the suburbs, you need a car. And that first car, if you share it between 3 or 4 people in a family, it provides tremendous value because mom or dad needs it to go to work or drop the kids off. The second car is kind of like a luxury. I don't know that it provides you with the same important value as the first. Nothing is going to pay you back and kick you back in a good way like your first investment or like Allegiant Stadium in this case. When a big band is going to come into Las Vegas and look for their venue, let me see, do I want to play at the 19,000-seat indoor arena or the 30,000-seat outdoor, whatever, baseball stadium? Or do I want to play in front of 70,000 3 nights in a row at Allegiant Stadium, and all the dates are open because the NFL only uses it 8 or 9 times a year? They're probably going to Allegiant Stadium. I'm not here to deny that Allegiant Stadium has not been successful. I can't back that up, but I'm looking at numbers I see that people are pointing out, and yeah, I'll agree. And I don't know that it's come through on all the promises, like jobs created, construction jobs, maintenance or employees on site. I don't know that it's done all those things, but has it had a lot of big and successful events and has it drawn in crowds? Yes. I think the answer to that is yes, for the record. But to know that your next one is going to be just like that too might be overstepping a little bit. The success of Allegiant Stadium has generated massive tax revenue that allowed us to add over $2 billion to our K-12 education budget and set aside $250 million for teacher raises in the 82nd session. Allegiant Stadium also required more than double the public investment of SB 1. But yeah, I gotta explain this here. If I'm correct, $750 million for Allegiant Stadium, but all of that coming from hotel room taxes, a 0.88% hotel room tax, which means that only visitors are paying only extra money. Well, I shouldn't say visitors. Anybody staying at a hotel, probably an out-of-towner, they're the only ones that are paying a little bit more. They're paying the taxes they used to pay, and they're going above and beyond that. So to truly say that it's public money, I mean, you weren't going to raise the hotel tax anyway. So it was money that the county or the state really wasn't going to see anyway unless you did it. In this case, like the A's are getting state tax credits, transferable tax credits. They literally are getting gift cards to give to people or use themselves to pay off state taxes in Nevada. They're literally taking money out of the coffers of the state of Nevada. It's all agreed upon. Don't get me wrong. This is not an unlimited amount. But $180 million of transferable tax credits. Not to mention the bonds being floated by Clark County and the $25 million of infrastructure money by the county and the $175 million by GLPI, the Gaming and Leisure Properties Incorporated, just to get to this site, the 9 acres at the Tropicana Hotel. I digress, but yeah, the Allegiant Stadium public money versus the A's ballpark public money, two different things. I understand that MLB is not the NFL, which is not the NHL nor the NBA, but each project must be evaluated on its own merits. Neither the NHL nor the NBA tend to operate on a public-private partnership model. That cannot be said for the NFL or MLB, even if we wish it were so. And I've got to back them up here on this because I think it was literally today, as this baseball stuff is kind of going through in the state of Nevada, investors have now come out and say, well, we want to build our own basketball arena. We want to bring the NBA to Las Vegas. And guess what, lawmakers? Don't even worry about a special session. We don't need any public money. Now, to an extent, there have been those trends, but I don't know that that's always a given, that the NFL and Major League Baseball need a public contribution and the other two don't. And honestly, it doesn't make sense why we've divided them like that. It doesn't always work out that way, but maybe that's the way Steve sees it from his research or in that market. The projections relative to the stadium project are exactly that. Projections. And let me just tell you, some of the projections are aspirations as far as I'm concerned. When we talk about being real versus being optimistic, it's an interesting line here. But I voted yes because I believe there is more than a reasonable chance the investment pays off, both by creating jobs and growing our revenue base, not to speak of the intangible benefits to Las Vegas. Again, evaluating the risk at hand here, the payoff, I guess the credibility of bringing Major League Baseball to Las Vegas. But projections, going back to that, are exactly that, projections. Now, why do you think he included this part in it? Maybe to acknowledge that, I don't want to speak for Steve here, but to acknowledge that the projections are projections and they could be wildly off, wildly short, maybe wildly equal, but in a totally different way. I mean, in fairness, I don't know, but I don't think anybody knows. To have projections on Las Vegas as a sports market, how long has it had the major 4 pro sports like baseball, basketball, football, and hockey? For 6 years? A total of 9 different seasons between one NHL team on its honeymoon of existence and the Raiders, who are kind of on a honeymoon of their own. They are all different, that's for sure, but there's just not enough, to me, there's not enough of a sample size to go on here. That's like telling somebody, well, I'm hitting 445 this year. Yeah, but how many at-bats do you have? Well, 7, but, it's different than 70 or 700. I don't think anybody gets 700 at-bats, but you know what I'm saying. Projections, important to note, projections mentioned here. I heard the concerns about the ownership group of the A's and their unwillingness to spend in Oakland. I believe that will be different in Las Vegas. There will be additional accountability to the Stadium Authority Board, and we will have the best community benefits agreement in the country. Let me address the last part first. I know they beefed up the community benefits agreement. They got it up to $2 million, I think, a year, plus some other considerations. And if they're happy with that, then I'm happy for them. They deserve that as part of their deal. How do you know it's the best? I mean, aren't some teams really charitable across the country, or teams that are ingrained in their markets? And hard, really apples and oranges type conversation. But if you're happy with it, then you're happy with it, and I'll move on. But in terms of the history, history of the A's spending. Now, to be fair, this goes all the way back to the year 2000, multiple iterations of A's front offices and ownership here, but that's the A's. Look at this, comes to us, by the way, from Danny Vietti of CBS Sports on Twitter. That green dot to the left of 2005, that's a $66 million contract to Eric Chavez. That is the biggest financial commitment the A's have ever made to a player back in 2004. $66 million. Look where all the other teams are over here. I mean, obviously the Angels and Trout and the Dodgers and Yankees and Padres and Red Sox and Mets and Rangers and Phillies, they're all way at the top, and those deals have all come, in recent years. You see the way this works. Time goes from left to right on your screen, and total contract value goes from low to high, the top of your screen. I mean, if that literally doesn't paint a picture of where the A's have been for the last almost 25 years. We'll move on. Going back to the thread, Vegas doesn't tolerate losing, and the pressure to invest in a winning team will be immense. In addition to the obvious upsides that winning brings in terms of attendance and loyalty. See VGK and the Vegas Golden Knights. Also, go ahead and bookmark this tweet to throw back in my face if I'm wrong about that. Steve, what are we doing here? I mean, you included that last part because you knew the reaction of so many people, and I think you also realized that if you talk about going out on a limb, I think the limb might have just snapped on you. You were way far out on that limb. Vegas doesn't tolerate losing. I mean, in a sense of maybe business, but in a sense of sports, how long have you existed for? You've had an expansion team in hockey that had an expansion draft. I mentioned the Silver Spoon before. The Golden Knights and the Kraken had an unreal ability to poach players from the top halves of NHL rosters and be good from the very start. Again, they've done well with it since. It wasn't just 1 year of the Stanley Cup final and that's it. They've built on it. Credit to them, but they were given a head start. Now you've got the Raiders who are what they are. Let's see what the next 3 years or so bring in Las Vegas. The pressure to invest in a winning team will be immense. Are you suggesting that that pressure didn't exist here in the Bay Area? Nobody talked about it? I mean, that might be a reason why attendance has been what it has been, right? When you turn over your roster and you send away a Chapman, an Olsen, a Bassett, a Manaea, a Frankie Montas, Marcus Semien, Sean Murphy, and on and on and on. Those are just the recent ones. This has happened multiple times. They made a movie, Moneyball, about this, So it's been going on for quite some time. To think that Las Vegas is going to put some pressure and demand this, and this is how it's going to be, and I know you think you're different, but you're also really new at this. And everybody might think they're different until you realize sports is sports, and you don't have much control over winning and losing. I mean, let's take it here and hit home real hard. Look at the San Jose Sharks. They were once an expansion NHL team. They had it the hard way. They had to do a dispersal draft of the Minnesota North Stars. They were so bad years 1 and 2, but they made the playoffs in year 3, and honestly, they made the playoffs most years of their existence so far. Right now, they're in a rut of a handful of years where they have not been able to get back in. But overall, playoffs every year for Team Teal. Now, the Golden Knights might be that way, but they might also go through a 5 or 7 year span where the salary cap, the hard cap in the NHL comes back to bite them, and there's nothing they can do about it. I mentioned the Sharks. They have all the good intentions, right? They have every right person and trying to make the right decision, but this is hard. To say that you don't tolerate losing, what are you going to do? Tell your team to take a hike? It doesn't happen that way. Sports don't happen that way. There's ebbs and flows. This is the way it is, whether you like it or not. Steve, look at your Red Wings. I'm imagining, again, that's your team being from Michigan. So good for so long. And then they hit the bottom of the lake for a couple years. Because being good has its price for a very long time. A lot of people, you should go on Twitter and take a look at the responses to this tweet. It's just, woof. Go ahead and bookmark this to throw it back in my face if I'm wrong. Yeah, but what is "I told you so" to a tweet from 6 years ago, 7 years ago going to do at that point? What's the value in that? Nah. Anyway, All that being said, I understand and appreciate why athletics fans are upset and angry. No city wants to lose its team. No fans want to see their team move elsewhere. But that is not a sufficient reason for Nevada to turn its back on the opportunity to bring MLB to Las Vegas. All right. I mean, I appreciate you acknowledging, honestly, the Oakland fan base. I really do. That's something that not everybody has been doing in their statements. And so I do appreciate that. And I agree. It's kind of like I'm going to do what I'm going to do separate from what has happened up there. You're separating yourself from the Oakland situation and making it all about the choice at hand and what you all have decided to do. I also appreciate the comments and perspectives of my legislative colleagues who spoke out against this and voted no. They too are doing what they believe to be in the best interest of the state. You really can't ask for anything more than that from elected officials. Look, I told you I'd have a beer with him. I said share a beer with him. You know what I mean? I'd have a beer alongside him before. I can respect that. He sees one side, he sees the other. Quite honestly, his comments and quotes from the beginning of this led me to believe that he was going to take a much harder stance on it instead of just voting it right on through. And the reaction from my friends and constituents have been equally mixed. Have they been mixed, though? I mean, again, it looked to me and sounded to me like at least 70 to 80% of the voting public in Nevada was against this, opposed it. I only saw it a few places, to be fair, never really wide scale, like 50,000 respondents, never saw that. But I'll put it this way, of all the polls I saw publicly, there was only one that seemed to favor this process of the A's coming down there and building a stadium, and it was put on and paid for by the A's several years ago, wasn't even current, with updated information or commitments, etc. And the reactions from my friends and constituents have been equally mixed. Some have thanked me, excited that MLB is coming to Las Vegas. I'm sure he's got that. Others have sent me profanity-laden emails expressing their disappointment or anger. I imagine I have lost a few friends along the way. It's sad to hear, but you know what? Look, Steve has also said all along that he didn't expect this much feedback from all over the place, not just his constituents. I mean, Steve, you're dealing with two markets here, hundreds of thousands of interested parties on this. It's a $400 million project, a 30-year commitment. Of course you're going to hear, from a lot of people on this, probably more than you've heard about anything else in your government career so far. But I never went into politics to make friends or try to please everybody. This is the wrong line of business for that. Some decisions are exceedingly difficult and, no matter what you decide, you will be both praised and pilloried?
Pillory.
Pilloried. Attack or to be ridiculed publicly. Okay, there you go. That is simply the nature of the beast. Yeah. Hey, it's like a lot of front-facing jobs, right? They love you one second, they hate you the next, sometimes no rhyme or reason. I totally get that as much as anybody else. Anyhow, whether you agree with the decision I made or not, and the group made, I hope this was at least helpful in illuminating my thought process along the way, and that these Twitter threads have helped shed light on the how, when, where, and why of the 35th special session. The end. Look, I just would have liked to have known maybe the commitments he got, the numbers that really sold him. If you just dial in some numbers here, throw out and say, here's what I liked about it. Here's where I know we can't go wrong. Here's where this is a good idea. But you know what? I'm not from Nevada. It's not my state. It's not up to me to put him under that microscope. I just would have liked to have known the personal assurances he got, the stuff that did not happen in public, because none of those assurances really happened in public. There were projections like he talked about, but which ones do you actually believe in? Which enough of them do you actually believe in? But overall, it was just a Twitter thread I thought was interesting. It gives a perspective, and sure, their hockey team just won a Stanley Cup. Their hockey team's been really good. The Raiders are a brand new thing. Allegiant Stadium is the first of its kind down there. It's been successful. What happens to the A's when they're one of four? And now there's an NBA team, There's also a WNBA team already in place. F1's going to take the spotlight in November. The Oakland A's in the Bay Area were overshadowed for so many years here, amongst other things. They were important, obviously. People care about them. That's clear right now. But they were one of many entertainment opportunities, even here in the Bay Area. What do you think is going to happen when, in 5 to 7 years, Las Vegas has all of the major 4 pro sports and all the other stuff going on? How's this going to turn out for the Oakland A's? And that whole idea, like he says, of, hey, bookmark this tweet. I told you so, in my opinion. Likely to happen. But also won't really matter. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so I can see you next time.